It's good to see some familiar faces and names, but again, no pressure to have your camera on. I know it's also dinner time and you're multitasking, but hopefully you find this information helpful and relevant. Again, just want to express my gratitude to PTA for continuing to provide this program. When I started as a counselor at the high school 13 years ago, we did not yet have Naviance. And I physically had to take all of my letters of rec to the post office and drop them in the mail to make sure that they were delivered. So that is one of the many tools and resources that Naviance provides, is just streamlining the letter of rec process for counselors, connecting with other applications like Common App and Coalition. So we are very fortunate. All right, so I am going to be sharing my screen for this first portion. And I'm going to give you a student's perspective of Naviance. If you have students who are in grade levels 10th or 11th, we're also providing the same presentation simultaneously. I think you're probably in the right spot though, because a lot of this information is going to be super important to you and your seniors. And we will be recording, as Kristen mentioned. So if you need to, you can always refer back to the recording. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get going. Okay, so this is what your student has access to. And every year, because our school provides a comprehensive counseling program, we provide very intentional lessons using Naviance based on grade levels. So 10th graders are getting career exploration counseling opportunities. Junior year, we dive more into the college component as a potential post-high school option. And then senior year, we're really using Naviance for college research to find best fit in terms of what your student's going to add to their potential college list, and then also accessing the scholarship resources that are part of this database. So this is the home screen of your student's Naviance page. I'm going to start with the self-discovery page, which is probably something that they haven't accessed since freshman year, but can be really helpful. So in terms of like learning styles, career interest profiler, these are things that they probably have done in 9th and definitely in 10th grade. And the whole objective here is that they're provided several assessments that basically ask a series of questions, and depending on how honest and how seriously they take the assessment, it will provide potential careers that are aligned with their values, their interests, their goals. Following that initial assessment, they can then do a bit of additional research. So what kind of lifestyle would this potential career lend itself to? What kind of major degree is required to obtain a certain type of profession? So it's really helpful. I will say, students' interests may change over time, and that's totally fine. As a high school student, we want them to explore their options. I tell my students, you do not have to have everything figured out. It's okay to change your mind, but to really keep their options open and not close any doors just yet. So this is part of what if you have a 10th grader or had a 10th grader, this is what they would be working on. I'm then going to go into careers a little bit more. So we know that careers, if you heard anything about our first annual career week last year, our goal is really to provide students with as many options and opportunities to connect with people in different fields as possible. And that was something we partnered with the PTA on as well. And that might include military for some folks. That might include a profession in the arts. That might be medical, law. We are not exclusive in terms of who we invite to this career fair, and really just want students to gain information so that they can make an informed decision about what classes they might need to take in high school to prepare them for a future major degree career. So if you were to have your students show their results and click on, let's say, they might be interested at this point in a business program down the line. It's going to tell you very specific career options. And again, provide detailed information as far as what kind of lifestyle that this career in California might lend itself to. Okay, colleges. This is probably what you're wanting to know most about, given that your student is a senior and considering their post-high school options. So when I talk about college, I really do mean any type of college. It can be 4-year, it can be 2-year, private, public, art school, trade school. I really want students to have options and not feel limited. Oh, I've only heard about UCLA, I've only heard about USC. That must be the only 2 places I can apply to. The reality is there are thousands of colleges in the United States, and what we as a counseling department encourage is really having your student research so that they can find the best fit over rank. So it's no longer about name recognition or notoriety. It's really about, is this where you see yourself because they offer the major that you're interested in? Freshmen return for another year because they loved it so much. Students graduate in 4 years and are able to obtain the profession that they desire. Right? So really using Naviance to provide those details to make a more informed decision. And when your students are putting together their college lists, which I'm sure you've seen them doing the last month or so, you might see a change, right? And there will be an opportunity for you to also provide input. So here at colleges, I'm thinking about your student is going to add colleges that maybe they have received information in the mail from, or maybe they walked past the counseling center and noticed, hey, today Occidental was there, and didn't really think about them, but got to talking to the rep and realized, wow, I think I could see myself at a small liberal arts college. It's really about, again, acquiring information so that they can make the best decision for themselves. But it really is a family decision too. And part of that discussion is also financial aid. And just being able to afford college, and also if your student is considering a more lengthier educational journey, so perhaps grad school, law school, med school, also figuring that into the plan. So these are the kinds of conversations that we've been having with your seniors as early as last spring, actually, when they were juniors. Many of them I've been pleasantly surprised have gotten started on their applications. They've also been writing their essays, depending on the college, of course, so if they're applying to private schools, they are expected to provide a personal statement as well as supplementals. And for the UCs, they'll be required to complete 4 out of 8 in personal interest questions in addition to the application. If they are applying to Cal States, they are going to simply complete the application using their transcript and self-reporting their classes and grades. We are here 100% to support them in the process. We recognize it is overwhelming. We have been there, but it has changed since we've been in their position, and we want to help them along the process. So if you find that your student is really overwhelmed, doesn't even know where to begin, still working on their list, please encourage them to meet with their counselor. Brunch and lunch, they can walk in, no appointment necessary. If they know for sure that their conversation is going to need a little more time, we're happy to carve out that and schedule an actual appointment with them, which we've already begun doing. And students have received information from us through our Google Classroom, just inviting them to schedule that one-on-one. Again, our goal is to provide information, walk with them through this process so that it's a little less stressful, a little less overwhelming. Just to be a trusted adult on campus to kind of bounce ideas off of, because they might have a perception of what this process is supposed to look like. And in reality, maybe you don't need 15 schools and that many extra supplemental essays and associated application fees, right? It might be helpful to talk to us and say, hey, the average student's probably looking at between $9,000 11 schools, right? Let's make sure that we're really researching so that your list makes sense. So this colleges I'm thinking about is where they would be adding any colleges that they have been considering. Whether or not they actually decide to apply to that school is a different story. But this is also available to you to update, and it kind of gives your student a message of like, oh, mom and dad are looking at so-and-so place. So it kind of gets that conversation going at home. The other thing, so once they have their colleges they're thinking about, they're going to actually, once they're ready, move specific colleges over to the colleges that they are actually applying to. And that allows their counselor to then have access to send things like our letters of recommendation on their behalf, their transcript, and a school profile, which is basically detailed information about who we are as a school, how many honors and APs we offer, what is considered a rigorous course load, that we are a small to mid-range campus. So really providing admissions officers throughout the country with context so they can determine, did your student take advantage of the opportunities afforded to them at our school? So that profile is really helpful for admissions readers who may not be super familiar with our area, although I take that back, they get to know our area pretty well. But the profile just provides a little extra context. That being said, while we have 19 APs, we do not expect, nor do we want students to aim for that. It really is a very personal journey. So please don't be alarmed. If you get a hold of our profile and you see that number, it's not an expectation. It's just a list of options that are available to students throughout their journey here with us. All right, so I'm actually going to head back up here. So perhaps your student is maybe in the earlier stages of still compiling their college list. I would encourage you to maybe have your student do a super match college search. And with this, there we go. With this information, they basically get to run a query on what's important to them in a school. Location could be a factor. Maybe it's important that they stay in California. Maybe it's not. Maybe it needs to have a Division 1, 2, 3 sports team, or maybe not. Maybe they're looking for a very inclusive, diverse environment. They can be that specific. So location, academics, right? Are they on par with that current freshman class? Does their GPA demonstrate that they are able to successfully kind of maintain with the current students at that university? That's a very good use of data because, you know, not only is that going to potentially determine acceptance, it's also going to determine how likely is that person to continue on and progress all 4 years at the university. And that's something that an admissions rep told me this weekend is they're really looking at the GPA and rigor to determine, you kind of basically use it as evidence to determine if that student's going to be able to manage okay once they get to that university. Academics, so do they have a variety of programs available? Admission would be, what's their acceptance rate, right? Like small liberal arts or Ivies might have an acceptance rate of below 10%, depending. Even one of our UCs had a 1% this past year. So highly competitive admissions for a number of schools, and yet there are also various schools who will have 26 to 50% acceptance rate. And maybe that's a good safety school to consider for your student. They could see themselves going, they have the programs that your student wants. And bottom line, they know they're going to get in somewhere, right? It's not that they're settling, but it also is a good fit and they'd be content going there. So just keeping in mind that, for our public schools like the UCs and Cal States, a lot of the majors are impacted, meaning they're popular, they only have a certain number of seats, and yet the number of students applying for those seats continues to increase each year, making the admissions process that much more competitive. I wish I could tell you there was a formula and that if you did this, you got in. Unfortunately, things are not that simple anymore with admissions. And so that actually brings me to the next point, which is the college essay. So if your student is, like I mentioned before, applying to a private school or UC, they are going to be editing essay or writing essays, which your counselors are more than happy to help edit or even just brainstorm. And ultimately, what that does for the student is really provide additional context. Also, just really clarify students' values and what their goals are when they get to college. What are they going to contribute to that campus? How do they show up in the world? What is their story? Keep in mind, there does not need to be a sob story. Nothing, traumatic needed to happen to win the admissions reader over. They really genuinely just want to get to know your student. And it's a challenge. It's a very different way of writing than your students are used to. I think also they're just, maybe taught not to brag. And we're like, tell us your whole life story in 650 words. It's a lot to ask. So I think the beauty is really in the editing process. And again, we are happy to help with that. I know English teachers are also doing that this year, getting students to get started on that. Maybe even just do a brain dump or a values clarification exercise and go from there. And then, of course, just making sure that they're answering the prompt. A side note, the UC system, when your student's actually on the application, it times out after 20 minutes. So I would encourage them to write their drafts in a separate space. And when they are completely ready to submit, copy and paste that into the UC application. Otherwise, if they're drafting it in there and 20 minutes go by, they will lose it. So just keep that in mind. I know I'm kind of jumping around. Let me go down a little bit. You'll notice that, some schools may still require an SAT or ACT. Some schools are test optional, and they really do mean it's optional. And if you're kind of like, are you sure? What I've heard from admissions officers is that if your student took one of these tests and kind of wants to gauge if it's a good idea or not to send their score, they can take a look at the current freshman classes scores of those who submitted them at that university. And if their score falls in the average range or higher, it is safe to send and it will only help their application. If they decide not to, it will not hurt them. It's essentially just one more piece of the pie in the holistic review. So with less information, there's less to really pull from, but it's not going to be held against them. They won't assume that, oh, the student didn't submit it because they did poorly. They'll just continue on with the rest of the portions of the application. But again, if they scored within the 50th percentile or higher of the current freshman class at that university, I have been told that it's safe to submit. If your student decides to submit scores, they will share those on the application and then request an official score be sent once they have been admitted and have accepted the admissions officer. So that won't happen until the spring. So for right now, everything, including grades that they report, classes that they've taken, and test scores, is all on the honor system. And then colleges will ask that we verify. So that's how that's done. Okay, I am going to continue on. Other aspects that your student might be looking for. I had a student who was really interested in ROTC, so he listed that in his query to figure out, like, for example, he'd never really heard about Cal State Maritime, and I had visited, and I'm like, I think this might be a good fit for you. You might want to check it out. It has ROTC, and he had originally wanted to get into the Navy right away. It's very competitive, started at Maritime and is now transferring. So there are a lot of ways to get to your final destination, and he's a great example of that. Diversity, we also mentioned. I have some people who are looking at women's colleges. others who, they want to go to a historically Black institution, and so an HBCU. So depending on your student, they're able to click on those unique categories. And then public versus private, 2-year versus 4-year. If your student is considering a community college, I think that's a great option as well. A third of our senior class goes that route every year. And we are very fortunate to have Pasadena Community College in our backyard. They historically will score either first, second, or third in terms of transfer rates to 4-year colleges, which excuse me, tends to mean that they're getting students the classes that they need in a timely manner. There's also the California Promise, which a lot of our students qualified for this last year, which allowed them to go for free or for a reduced cost. And that allows students to save money, also figure out a little bit more what they want to do, because typically, everywhere you go, the first 2 years is going to be in general ed. So it gives some students a little more time and flexibility to really figure out what they want to major in. Or maybe they just didn't have the GPA they needed to get into a UC when they were in high school. This allows them with more life experience and maturity to potentially earn the GPA they need to transfer. And PCC does have a transfer agreement program with a number of schools. So that's a really nice option as well. Doesn't have to be PCC, but we do partner with them. They will be coming in January to sit with any senior who's interested and register them right on the spot. It takes about 20 minutes. And if they participate in that, they will get priority registration for classes in the summer. All right. Okay. Miss Swift, what do you think? Should I go into more detail? Have you taken a look at the Q&A? Maybe there's something that I covered too quickly and I can go back and provide more detail on.
I don't see any questions yet, but if anybody wants to chat any questions to me, please feel free.
I feel like I should share the scattergram. Would that be helpful?
I think it's always interesting.
Okay, I think it is too. It's a little bit, so the data is about 11 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Now, keep in mind that during COVID, or during the heart of it, a lot of facilities were no longer providing testing, right? And so students were not testing, and therefore, we have this new wave of testing optional. That's one of the things, making sure that everyone had equal access to test. That just wasn't available. So some of the scores are not, you might be missing some, or we might be missing some. Let me find that. Okay, it'll take me a moment. I'm wondering if I can come back to that. Would that be okay? I'm going to switch over to Google Classroom now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to the scattergram. All right, so, oh, hi, I'm working right now. Thanks, love. Okay, so we've got senior Google Classroom. Okay, so all of your students were invited to join their senior counselor's class of 2024, which is their senior Google Classroom. And you also have the opportunity to join too. So please do ask your students about it. We will provide pretty regular updates here. So for example, today we posted about an upcoming free fair that St. Francis is hosting in La Cañada next Wednesday. About 30 or so colleges from all around are going to be there, kind of a mini fair. So if you're interested in that, that's available for you. Also, we post about internships, jobs. There was another free event about financing college. And please know that California's expectation is that every family will apply for the FAFSA, which is the federal application for, free application for federal student aid. It is changing. It's in the process of being updated. And so it will be rolled out December 1st with a deadline of the beginning of March. For this, a student does not necessarily need a social security number. And if that applies to your student, we can sit with them. Another note is that you will need your tax returns from last year. We had a great speaker last spring provide information on how to navigate your financial aid application. And so I think we will be posting that very soon. So you can watch the recording if you're interested. It goes into detail about, you know, if the student comes from a split family, how to complete the application that way. But this is really important. Again, it's a free application, and ultimately what you will get after applying is an expected family contribution. And then federal aid, or schools will determine how much federal aid you qualify for. And that can come through grants, loans, etc. All right. So these are the kinds of posts, varying events in the community that we just want to make sure your students have information on. Also being mindful that they get all kinds of Google updates all the time. Found out that you can actually like silence us, so please encourage them not to, because what we share is, I think, kind of important, especially as college deadlines are coming close.
And Marcile, as a parent, how do you join this?
Yeah, let me show you. Sorry. So we'll go to people. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. Okay, so let me scroll back up. Okay, so for example, I can, like, some are already joined. So some have already joined, and then others I can just invite. Your child can also invite. So those are options there. Feel free to also email your counselor, your student's counselor, and we'd be happy to add you as well. Yeah, we don't want you to miss out on any information, although I know it's a lot. I recognize that now that I'm a parent. I am shocked at the multitude of emails I get, but it's good, right? I just have to find time to read them. All right, so back to, we're actually gonna go to classwork here. So this is literally every piece of information your student could ever want about how to navigate this college application process. They are going to want to have their own personal email, a professional sounding one that is different than their school email when they are starting on their college applications. They'll want a place that where they keep track of all their passwords so that they don't waste time having to reset them. Top 10 list is what is the information that we had sent to seniors at the very beginning of the year. We actually did classroom visits and just kind of welcomed them to the new year, did kind of a pulse on how are you feeling. Many of them I've known since middle school, so that was especially delightful for me. So just things that they should be mindful of in August, in September, in October. When's the last date to take SAT, for example? The last testing would be December, just so you know. The back side of that, oop, doesn't want to let me open it. Okay. In the college research process, I love the college essay guy. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he's just a great resource and provides a lot of free information and resources on his website, from everything to how do you build your list to how to tackle the personal statement. So it's just an additional resource. Whenever I have looked at his materials, I have gleaned something from it. So just another added resource. I did mention we have about 100 college reps that visit us throughout fall semester. Your student does not need to sign up. They literally just need to walk towards lunch right in front of the counseling office Mondays and Thursdays. We have art schools, military, community colleges, four-year colleges. So about 100 reps that come Mondays and Thursdays at lunch. And this is a great opportunity for students to gather information, but also these tend to be the people who are going to read your student's application. So, and they do make note. They'll make note, like, I met so-and-so today, they were great, can't wait to read their application. So it kind of puts a face with the name and just that personal touch. Fee waivers. If your student is receiving free or reduced lunch this year, they may be eligible for up to 4 fee waivers, which they can access with Ms. Chu in the main office. Same thing for SAT and ACT. There's also one more, I believe it's NACAC, that provides additional fee waivers. College applications are pricey, anywhere from 80 to 100 per. And I think the misconception sometimes is like, oh, well, the UC application houses all the campuses. I'm just going to submit the one application, but they charge you per campus. So just keep that in mind. If you have not completed the application to see if your child qualifies for free or reduced lunch, please go ahead and access that because your child might be eligible for fee waivers. Let's see, so other important information, you'll hear the term holistic review. So there's information on that. ED and EA, so early decision is a binding contract with the university, and this tends to be for students who are 100% gung-ho about a particular college and have also kind of figured out the finances with their family. So if they are admitted, they are going. Early action is similar, but it is non-binding. The benefit, you apply sooner, you know sooner, and you can kind of take a deep breath sooner. But you can change your mind depending on your subsequent admissions decisions. You might have heard that a lot of people are now considering gap years as well, and that's great. I think for some students, that's exactly what they need to be doing. And then they'll reapply, or they might even request that college hold their admission. So reasons to take a gap year, there's an article there if that applies to your family. Information on the military academies. That's a pretty comprehensive application process that usually requires 1 to 2 letters from a senator. I have gone through this process before with students, so if your student is interested in this, please let me know. Community college information, we went over a little bit. Applying to Cal States, that's our other public school systems. We've got the UCs, we've got the Cal States. So they do have their own application. We are fortunate that we are the feeder school to Cal State LA. So if students meet minimum eligibility, they are automatically admitted aside from the nursing program, which is impacted. We will be having the UC and an independent college rep come speak with our seniors next Tuesday and Wednesday during late start in the auditorium, and they will go piece by piece through their respective applications and speak from their lens as an admissions officer as to what they are looking for in applicants. I highly recommend your student attend one or both, depending on where they're applying. And then in October, on the 10th during late start, we will be having our Cal State rep do the same thing. Just kind of, these are the pitfalls on the application. This is how you report your grades in progress and planned. Because it can be tricky, right? They've never done this before. So it's helpful to hear it from an expert. Then the week before it's due, so the application opens October 1st for both the UCs and the Cal States, and they both close, hard deadline, November 30th. So the week prior to Thanksgiving break, we have an all hands on deck approach. So we have Cal State LA come and sit with students. We'll try to get a UC admissions person come sit with students and just, okay, where are you at in the application? Where are you stuck? How can we help you? Did you complete the A through G's? If not, let's come up with a real quick plan for how to do that. Same thing with editing essays, making sure everything's good to go before they leave on Thanksgiving break is our goal, because we know they deserve a break and we don't want this weighing on them over break. So I would encourage your family to really consider, having a deadline ahead of the deadline, basically, right before Thanksgiving break, so that you really can enjoy your break and you're not dealing with, a potential website crash on November 30th. All right, again, each UC, you'll have to click per campus. Same with the Cal States, you will click which campuses you are applying to, and that application will get sent. Personal insight questions for the UCs are listed there. Cal States, no essays, no letters. UCs, yes essays, no letters. Private independent college, everything. Application, letters, essays. So all that information is here. What I've been telling students is you do need to start your Common App now if you want a letter of recommendation from us, right? It is a requirement to get a counselor's letter as well as 1 to 2 core teachers at your current school. So I've had students say, you know, can I get it from a coach? Can I get it from my church? Can I get it from a previous, you know, a summer school teacher? Colleges are very specific about who they want to hear from. And I know it can be difficult to acquire these letters, so the sooner the better, because some teachers do have a max limit on how many they're able to write. But absolutely guaranteed they will get a counselor letter because it is a requirement. Now, for some colleges, they will accept additional letters of rec, in which case, perhaps the coach, if they're planning on playing collegiate sports, that would make sense, right? Or a mentor at church, that might make sense. But the primary ones should be from core teachers, you know, maybe one from STEM, maybe one from the humanities. Ideally, teachers who not only know your student academically, but can really speak to them as a person, who they are, how do they contribute, their values, that kind of thing. And I'll actually be doing a workshop for our staff on October 2nd on how to guide students with their essays, as well as kind of the best way to go about writing letters of rec to honor our students in the best possible light. Okay, we have already embarked on the letter of recommendation meetings with your students, and it's been great. I was telling Kristen, this is my favorite time of year because I get to sit across from your students one-on-one for like a solid 45 minutes and just get to hear about their journey. And I just feel so privileged. And then if you take advantage of writing your parent brag sheet, that is also really special because it allows you time to reflect on your child's experiences. And I do not take them lightly. I very much value your insight and input as a parent, and really try to weave each letter together to just show what a spectacular human your child is. Information that the admissions person, you know, couldn't glean from the transcript or their essay, like additional context and additional details about who they are as a person is really our objective in writing these unique letters. And there's no template. You know, we've heard admissions officers say, like, you can just send bullet points. And I'm like, I get it. You don't have a lot of time to read all these, but it's hard for me to be that succinct because I have a lot to say about your children. So that's there. If you wanted to take a look, we'd love to hear you brag about your child. It's right here. And then your student rather, would just print that for us. And at our meeting, we'll review that together. And I know I've mentioned the word context a lot. The goal is really like, you know, maybe there was a dip in the grades and there's an explanation for that. I'm happy to go into that. Or maybe the mental health situation and they're on the other side of it. We can tactfully address that. It doesn't have to be their whole story. But maybe it's part of their journey and they feel comfortable sharing it. We can craft it in an appropriate, respectful way. Yeah, a ton of information on financial aid and then scholarships. So I'm going to head back to Naviance, SAT and ACT information here as well. Before I go back to Naviance, I will quickly say the SAT is moving to a digital format and colleges will be accepting that new format for those who do still require tests or are test optional. If you're not familiar with the ACT, it is as widely recognized as the SAT, but for whatever reason, never took hold on the West Coast as much as it has on the East Coast, but both are widely respected by colleges. They are different in terms of format. And also the ACT has a science component that the SAT does not. And so In talking with juniors this past month, I have just shared that detail in case students' strength is science, they may want to opt for the ACT. Or if your seniors are doing one more sitting in December, they may want to opt for that if science is a strength.
So Marcile, we do have a bunch of questions whenever you're ready for them.
Yes, I'm just going to quickly show you the scholarship feature, and then I'll be done with my portion, if that's okay.
That's great.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. You can tell I can go on and on about your students and anything counseling related.
Love it.
Some of my students who tell me that they really, get nervous with public speaking or classroom presentations, I'm like, I was the exact same way until I found counseling, and now you can't shut me up. So we can grow into these things. Oh my goodness, where is it? Let me scooch this way. Okay, I might have to come back to it. I will just say this. Right now on Naviance, your students have access to a plethora of scholarships nationwide. They can just go on there now. I mean, if they're redheaded, they're left-handed, they're a Boy Scout, like you name it, there is a scholarship out there for them. It takes a little bit of time to research. I also have a running list of scholarships that I've heard about from other colleagues in different schools. So if they're interested, please feel free to, have your student email me. I'm happy to share what information I have. I will say the more global, or I should say nationwide scholarships are a little bit harder to earn just because they're open to so many more people. But please keep in mind that in the spring, we have South Pasadena specific scholarships that are made known to our students. And Miss Gill does a great job of facilitating that. And we partner with her and just make sure students have access. And typically at that point, it's editing an essay they already wrote for college and just making sure that it fits the prompt. But there's a lot of money and a lot of generous supporters in South Pass who want your students to continue on after high school. And it basically takes one essay. So just keep that in mind. That usually happens around April, and we post them to Naviance, and we also post them to the daily bulletin. Okay, I'm ready for Q&A.
Okay, let's do it. So I'll start with the most basic. Do you use your child's Naviance account, or can a parent create one? And if so, how do you create one if I don't have one already?
Oh, you do not use your child's. You will have your own login information. I would ask you to email your counselor tomorrow, and they can reset your password. If you've never logged on, then we'll send you a link.
Awesome. Is there a way for parents and their student to use the calendar and task tools in Naviance together so that we can post to-dos, events, deadlines, keep the whole family organized?
Okay, calendar and task. I have never used that myself, so I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. Is there a way to jot down who wrote that question?
Yep.
You can email them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm gonna get their email.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. That sounds like a great plan, right? So everyone's on the same page about, yeah, I do have a spreadsheet that I can share with students if they're interested to just keep track of deadlines. We have that data sheet there on the Google Classroom as well. But something that you also have access to would probably be great. So I'll look into that.
How do our kids sign up to get a counselor recommendation?
So they will request a one-on-one meeting with their counselor through Calendly. So we put our Calendly schedule on Google Classroom 2 weeks ago. And every time we post a Google Classroom, your student should get a notification that prompts them to open up the message. And so in the Calendly link, they'll see when we're available for the next 3 months, and they would select a 30 to 45-minute session with us, ideally during like a home study hall, TA period, sport, or elective, so they're not missing academic instruction. And to that meeting, they would bring the brag sheet, a resume, any drafts of essays they'd like us to review, and their complete college list with the deadline so that we know when our deadline is.
Awesome. Can you explain how the colleges treat unweighted GPAs? Does a student immediately get sidelined based on the unweighted GPA, or do they get weighted pursuant to the college's formula?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we do not weigh our GPA, nor do we rank. And that's listed on our profile, so they understand that when they see your student's application. Every college will recalculate the GPA to look at your student in the best possible light. I would encourage your student to just go Google, GPA calculator. For any honors or AP that they've taken in junior and senior year, it's 1 point per semester added to the GPA. So likely what is on their transcript is not as high as the colleges will deem it to be when they recalculate.
Great.
Mhm.
Do any universities want the SAT scores or transcripts sent during the application process? And if they do, how do we send them?
Yeah, so counselors are responsible for sending the transcript. So for private colleges, we will send the transcript now, which is everything that they've done until the fall. It will reflect the classes that are in progress. Then we will send what's called a mid-year report, which reflects their first semester grades. And if a student made any changes to their schedule for the spring, we will also note that so that they're not blindsided and admissions is not revoked. And then ultimately, our registrar will send the final transcript in July. For UCs, they do not require them until admittance. They might spot check periodically, but that's pretty random.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Are you required to file a FAFSA if you don't think you're going to qualify for anything?
Yeah, I have heard parents and families say, like, there's no way we're going to qualify. Why even bother? California last year, very formally requested that every school district do their part to encourage families to do so because some families are pleasantly surprised. They didn't think they would qualify and they actually did. So I think it's worth applying. It's free. I mean, it might take about an hour of your time, but it is free and you might be pleasantly surprised. At the end of the year, we do have to note any family who opted not to. Because the state wants that information. So we might have to continue to say, hey, how can we help you complete this?
But they're making it way easier this year, aren't they? Because last year was a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a decreased number of questions. Yeah, I've heard some pros and cons about it, and I don't know if that's helpful to share, but it is going to be a shorter version. They have removed the question about any other students in college, and that can be kind of a downside for some families who have multiple students going to college at the same time. I have heard that would impact the UCs more so than the private schools, because again, the private schools can pull other funding, not just federal.
Are there any college interview workshops?
Great question. Officially, no, but I do have a list of college questions that if your student wants to participate in any interviews, they can go in prepared. So I'm happy to sit with them and go over that, maybe do a practice session. I think that's great. Nothing to be lost by going through that process. It's also an interview for your student, right? Is this they might be meeting with an alum or a current student, and that's really helpful to get that insider's perspective so that they can decide, is this really where I want to be?
Yeah. Follow up on the GPA question. The UCs don't recognize a number of SPHS honors classes. Does this mean that honors classes are slotted as regular class?
Great question. So you're probably referring to the ones that take place during 10th. They are not going to honor the extra point per semester, but it is evidence of rigor. And it is evidence, I should say, it gives your student oftentimes the foundation to be successful in future honors and AP courses. The UCs will cap the number of points that they will attribute to the GPA to 4. So a lot of times you'll see a student do like AP Lang, but they won't do AP Lit because they know the UCs are only going to take one of those English AP courses. As I mentioned, I met with a private college admissions person over the weekend, and she was like, it's great. It is not a negative. If, you know, even though we don't allow students to walk in with college credit and take a reduced number of classes, it still demonstrates rigor, and it's evidence that they will be successful here when they get here. Hope that answered that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It shows rigor, which is
It
what you
shows rigor. Yeah. So even if it's not going to be counted in the GPA, it is a demonstration of rigor, and that's part of the equation.
Yeah, that's great. What are reasons that people have had their admission revoked?
Oh no. Okay. This happened my first year as a counselor, and it was heartbreaking. It didn't happen to my student, but I had heard about it. Okay, so the student was in fourth year band, and band is a UC approved visual performing art. And they thought, oh, well, I have more than enough. And it's senior year, so I'm going to take it easy. They took it easy and earned a D, which is not considered passing for UCs, and their admission was revoked.
Oh no.
It's, I mean, a pretty rare and pretty rare situation, but yeah, senior year in the eyes of a college admissions person is the preparation, the launching pad for freshman year. So they don't think of it as like, oh, like cool, you can coast now. They're like, come to us ready. Now, as a counselor, I want students to find balance, right? I do not want them to burn out before they even leave us. I don't. But I also know that senioritis can set in, and that is a real consequence if we don't kind of keep things in check.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, I might also mention, you know, behavior is part of it, behavior and discipline. So admission is contingent on a person graduating and also not, you know, blowing it for themselves with decisions in the moment that might cost them, right? So, again, rare that would happen, but you know, we just want to encourage students to do their best, be their best, so that they've earned that spot and they should go and experience it. And I would hate for any of those things to be roadblocks.
Yeah. One last question that I'm seeing, should we send AP scores from sophomore and junior year during admissions or just after accepted?
After acceptance, yeah. So your student can certainly list them, but you won't send the official score until they're accepted and that your student accepts admission.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all the questions I have. If you're okay, I was going to put some links in from past things that we've done and other things that are coming up. So Marcile and I were talking ahead of time. We were part of a committee called Challenge Success that is it's run out of Stanford University, and they have an amazing talk that they do about finding your college fit. So if your student is still looking for, I'm not really sure what college I want to go to, it is $15, but it is a nonprofit and it benefits a nonprofit. But it's happening, I want to say Wednesday, but this is the link for it that I'm putting in the chat right now. It's really here. What does it say? On September 20th at 4 p.m. So it's a horrible time, but if you can't attend, they send you the recording. So it might be worth it if you want to see that. It's an amazing, I've seen the presentation, I think 3 or 4 times. But also if you go to that website, you can see some other information that they have. They have a whole they have a white paper they've done on college fit and how important that is, more so than what college it is. It's about really finding where your child fits in the world. So that's great. We have a few other things. Last year, I hosted a PTSA talk in April, and I called it College Applications Are Coming. Maybe some of you saw it. I'm putting that in the chat right now. And we met with a couple college counselors who talk to us about just all sorts of things. Like Marcile hit on so much tonight, but it's kind of some of those things that you don't even think about that we tried to hit on too. I have a kid who's actually going to college on Thursday. I have another one who's in college but took a gap year. So we've done the college process 3 years in a row. So that's why I hosted that, because I felt like I knew a lot and we got their advice too. So that was pretty awesome. We have another one that PTSA did a few years ago. It is a few years old, but I thought it was really interesting. It was about like why it's called Why Community College. And there was a woman that went to community college and then transferred to UCLA. And she talks about the benefits to her of community college and how that was such an amazing place for her to go. And as Marcile said, a third of our kids go to community college. And it's really a place, maybe your kid's not ready for regular college. Maybe they just can't. Maybe it's just a great place to, save money for a couple of years. There's so many reasons to go to community college, and she does this great talk for it. And then I'm going to put the counseling website has a couple of videos, which has an old introduction to Naviance, which you can ignore, but it also has another college fit presentation that they did last year. So just so much information that we have online that I want you all to know about in case you feel like you still have questions and everything. And of course, our counselors are amazing. And if you email them, they will answer you and get back to you. So I just wanted to share all that too. Hope that's okay.
Thanks, Kristen. I'm glad you did. I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I know it was a lot of information. Naviance, again, is a great resource. We use it heavily in senior year. And if I haven't met with your senior yet, I hope to soon. Please encourage them to book their meeting with me. I know it can be overwhelming, but we are with them every step of the way. And thank you for raising such amazing students. It is truly delightful to go to work each day. It does not feel like a job. It feels like a gift. So thank you.